Well, welcome back. In this episode of Time Machine, we'll continue to explore the colorful history of Santa Catalina Island. We'll begin in late 1891 with the Banning family's purchase of the island, something that was in the works for several decades by this point in time. Like my other videos in this series, I've colorized and enhanced each of the following historic images, not to alter the past, but to give these images a pulse and help transport you to a bygone era. No disrespect intended to the original photographers. After purchasing Catalina Island in 1887, George Chateau immediately began developing his vision of a seaside resort and tourist destination. Chateau contracted Banning's Wilmington Transportation Company and scheduled 3 trips a week between Avalon and San Pedro to accommodate and lure both tourists and entice buyers to his fledgling hamlet. You can see the SS Hermosa at the steamer pier Chateau constructed. Although originally called the town of Chateau, George's sister-in-law, Etta Whitney, convinced him to change the name to Avalon, the island from Arthurian legend. Many of Avalon's streets still bear the names given to them by Etta in 1888, such as Sumner, Clarissa, and Marilla Avenues. Chateau's longest addition to Avalon was the grand 3-story Metropole Hotel. This hotel was enlarged and modified continuously for almost 3 decades, up until the Great Avalon Fire in 1915, when it and just about every other hotel in town burned down. But we'll get to that soon enough. Chateau sold a number of parcels to early pioneers to the island, including Peter Gano, whose house, on the right, still stands as a testament to time, and probably the most recognizable structure on the island today, after the famous casino, of course. Alonzo and Sophia Wheeler were among the first to purchase lots from George Chateau in 1888 and originally opened their grocery store and bakery seen here. Located beachfront on the corner of Crescent and Sumner Avenues, this was one of 5 lots the Wheelers purchased for a total of $2,660. The Wheelers were the first to buy property for business in this fledgling seaside resort. The Wheelers would eventually replace these structures with the Avalon Home, a lodging house advertised by the Los Angeles Herald as a first-class hotel, pleasant dining room, efficient service, tables supplied with the best the market affords. Keep your eyes open. You'll see this distinctive roofline in many of the photos I've included, and it'll help get your bearings. In this shot of downtown Avalon taken in 1892, you can see the recently completed 3-story Glenmore Hotel on Sumner Street. The Glenmore was owned and operated by Mr. and Mrs. Whitney, yes, George Chateau's brother and sister-in-law Etta, for the next 25 years. Now called the Glenmore Plaza Hotel, it is Catalina Island's oldest existing hotel and the second oldest in the entire state of California. In its heyday, the Glenmore hosted a variety of famous guests, including Theodore Roosevelt, Charlie Chaplin, Clark Gable, and Amelia Earhart, just to name a few. In January of 1892, the Banning family bought Catalina Island for a sum of $128,740. Captain William Banning, on the left, was president of the Wilmington Transportation Company from 1886 until 1919 and took the lead with the development of Catalina Island with the formation of the Catalina Island Company in 1894. As president of the company from 1894 until 1919, Captain Banning directed the business from his office in downtown Los Angeles and immediately began advertising. With his experience driving stagecoaches, piloting steamships and tugs, and his early involvement with the San Pedro and Los Angeles Railroad, William had the perfect set of skills to carry out the development of the island into a high-class resort. As reported in the Los Angeles Herald on May 12, 1892, charming Catalina being put in trim for the summer, streets and boulevards made, a new pavilion, additions to the hotel, water being developed. From a gentleman who's just returned from a visit to Santa Catalina Island, a Herald reporter yesterday got some interesting points as to the many improvements being made over there by the Banning brothers. A good compact macadamized street has been made of Crescent Avenue. The material for making the road was obtained from the west end of Avalon Bay, and a beautiful promenade is made in that side as well. The pavilion is rapidly approaching completion. It is circular in form, with a dancing floor 75 feet in diameter. There is a stage at the land side 70 feet wide and 50 feet deep. The building is glass enclosed, and on the outside is a veranda 10 feet wide, which will be utilized as a cafe. The biggest improvement is being made at the Hotel Metropole. 40 rooms have been added, a new kitchen built and building erected for the bar and billiard room. The hotel is being repainted, repapered, and will be newly furnished throughout. The Grand View is the name of a new 30-room hotel erected by George E. Weaver. The Avalon Home, a new house erected by E.J. Whitney, and a half-dozen large boarding houses will furnish accommodations for all. The season will open about June 15th, and on July 1st, a large steamer will be out on and daily trips made. This year, there will be no charge to campers for ground or water. Everything points to the fact that there will be a great flow of visitors to Catalina this season. In the 1890s, Avalon offered around 100 canvas tents. Often referred to as Tent City or Rag City, these provided affordable lodging, with beds and basic cooking facilities which were rented for roughly $7.50 per week. Here is a group of well-dressed campers posing for a photo. Keep your eyes open. This was the Victorian era, where just about everyone wore a hat. Some pretty stylish ones to boot. The Avalon Inn, located on Beacon Street, was built in 1896 and offered lodging somewhere in between tent camping and the more upscale Metropole Hotel. I could swear that building was still there when I visited the island in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of minimum wage workers rented rooms. Anyone out there confirm that? The Bannings were quite busy planning and building amenities to entice vacationers by providing a variety of activities and facilities to cater to tourists. In 1892, the Banning brothers completed Catalina's first country club and tennis club, along with a 3-hole golf course. By 1894, it had been expanded to 9 holes. I believe it's the oldest operating golf course in California. In 1902, the Banning brothers built the Pilgrim Club on Whitley Avenue, located behind the Metropole Hotel. It was a luxurious, men's-only gambling establishment, kind of like a mini Monte Carlo. It was rumored that the chandelier hanging in the great room cost a whopping $300,000. I wonder what the buy-in was. In 1893, the Bannings Wilmington Transportation Company provided steamer service on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays and Sundays on the steamer Hermosa. With a ticket on the Banning steamship came additional privileges of free camping, free water, as well as free trash removal daily. Tents could also be rented for $7.50 a week. The Hermosa could only hold about 150 passengers, but would be replaced in 1902 with the Hermosa II, capable of carrying 700 passengers at a time. A series of bigger and faster steel-hulled steamships would follow, culminating with the SS Catalina, or Great White Steamer, as she was called, which was launched on May 3, 1924. This is one of my favorite photographs of Avalon back in the day. There is so much to see in this single photo. Some really beautiful gaff-rigged ketches. On the left, we can see the pavilion and the Hermosa at the steamer pier. As we pan back to the right, dead center in this photo, we see a pile driver and a steam donkey, an essential piece of technology used to construct piers and trestle bridges. And finally, as we look towards the shore, we can see the Metropole Hotel and Bathhouse built by the Bannings in 1892. Here is a close-up of the bathhouse. This was something found at every beach town and resort at that time. They provided private rooms to change and many also offered bathing attire for rent. Concerned about the ability of Avalon and its residents to fight a potential fire, and fires were always a concern, the Bannings installed a 10-horsepower force pump at the base of the bathhouse with a capacity of 8,000 gallons an hour. This could be used to fight fires and was also used to pump water for sprinkler carts on the Crescent Avenue Promenade. One of the best views of Avalon has always been looking towards Sugarloaf Point. Here is a stereoscopic card taken of the point in the 1890s. This was an early form of 3D imaging and gave people a chance to visit faraway places while still sitting at home. Kind of like YouTube. Having a photograph of your visit to Catalina Island was not always an easy task in the 1890s. Cameras at that time were big and bulky, but that didn't stop vacationers from capturing the moment, complete with the family dog. Believe it or not, this photo, titled An Intimate Moment, would actually be considered quite risque. I think there's probably enough material in that outfit to make over 100 modern bathing suits today. Although William Banning would not build a house on the island, both of his brothers would. In 1893, Hancock Banning began clearing land at Descanso Canyon to build his island getaway. Here is a report in the California Magazine dated February of 1893. Jimmy Elms was in charge of the Chinese brought over to clear the cacti from both the side hills encircling Descanso Beach in preparation for the building of Joseph Banning's new home in February. Jimmy gave detailed instructions to the men to take care in clearing the pretty colored leaves of poison oak bound in with the cacti. After the first day's labor in the warm sun, the Chinese reported again for work, yet they were continually scratching themselves and asking Jimmy, "What's this?" They had not heeded his warnings. One of them suffered so intensely that he was sent to Los Angeles to obtain relief. Descanso Beach was also known as Lucky Beach. Well, I guess those workers probably didn't call it Lucky Beach. I was a little confused when I read this because it refers to Joseph Banning, but I know he would eventually build his house at the Isthmus in 1909. The Isthmus House is now a bed and breakfast called the Banning House Lodge and Villas and continues to host visitors to the island. In an effort to stay in touch with the mainland, a winged mail service was started between Los Angeles and Avalon in 1894. Homing pigeons were used to carry messages back and forth to the island and mainland until 1902, when the Pacific Wireless Company created a telegraph transmission station on the island. Check out the dog in the foreground. Looks like he's licking his chops. When visiting the island, you didn't need to go far to rent a boat. Small stands dotted the shoreline and offered visitors a chance to view the crystal clear waters and colorful underwater kelp forests, teeming with bright orange Garibaldi, which didn't become California's official state fish until 1995. I'm sure Catalina had something to do with that. In this view taken from the Metropole Hotel, you can see the macadamized promenade. Boy, that's a mouthful. I have to admit, I had to Google the word macadamized. Developed by a Scotsman named John McAdam, this is a type of road construction using crushed stone, compacted in convex layers to provide drainage. Kind of similar to a crushed granite surface we commonly see in use today. How many of you missed the steam donkey in the last photo? Here is the Jennett family getting ready to take a boat tour of the harbor, and directly behind them is a pile driver and steam donkey. I've seen photos of steam donkeys used to build piers and wharfs in every beach town in Southern California. Wonder what it must have been like to take a dip wearing these old woolen bathing suits. Women must have had a particularly tough time, dressed head to toe in wool. Take a look in the background. If you look carefully, you will see the tunnel built by the Bannings to access Descanso Canyon. By the end of the century, a fleet of small glass-bottom rowboats were available to tourists, many of them named for cities and states across the United States, like the Oregon seen here. Here is Hugo's glass-bottom rowboat, Aquarium. His ad read, "To see the entire submarine gardens, be sure to take Hugo's glass-bottom rowboat, Aquarium. Divers bring up shells to this boat. Private parties a specialty." I can only imagine the sea life they could view over a century ago. I know I first rowed on the glass-bottom boat Phoenix back in the early 60s, and I bet that most visitors to Catalina Island over the years can recall their first glass-bottom boat ride as well. In addition to the fleet of glass-bottom boats evolving on the island, small rowboats were also rented out for fishing. How many of you remember renting a small outboard motorboat from Jay at Joe's Rent-A-Boats? In July of 1903, Catherine McLean Loud notes in her diary, "During July 1903, the new glass-bottom powerboat Cleopatra came into Avalon Bay from the shipyard of Herbert E. Carse of Hardison and Carse of San Pedro. The Cleo had a flat bottom so she could land directly on the beach by riding the pebbles. This would eliminate the transfer of passengers to a rowboat and then land on the rocky shore. The Cleopatra was the first gas-powered, side-wheel glass-bottom boat. On July 26, 1903, the LA Times reported, "The engine room is amidships, while 15 feet of heavy plate glass measuring 30 inches in width extends along the center of the boat on either end, furnishing an excellent view of the water." This photo was titled "Cleopatra and Empress." It appears they must have remodeled the pilot house on the Cleopatra since its launching in 1903. The glass-bottom boat Empress was launched on February 15, 1906. Measuring in at almost 80 feet in length, she could carry a whopping 118 passengers. In 1912, the 107-foot-long Emperor was added to the growing fleet of glass-bottom boats. According to Islopedia, after 18 years of service, Emperor was battered beyond repair during a heavy Santa Ana windstorm in November 1930 and sank at her mooring. Parts were salvaged for future use in construction of the Phoenix, which was launched to replace the Emperor. By about 1896, Avalon was well on its way to becoming a tourist destination. Avalon would become even more well-known when in August of 1893, the Banning Company shipped from 10 to 20 tons of pebbles and 10,000 assorted seashells from Catalina to the World's Fair in Chicago. That was pretty creative advertising. Tourists visiting Avalon at the turn of the century continued to look for photo opportunities, and a photo with Sugarloaf as a backdrop remained a must-have photograph. Today, tourists are still taking photographs from this angle, but today the casino sits where Sugarloaf once was. Catalina Island has been referred to as the birthplace of big game fishing. With Dr. Charles Frederick Holder's record of 183-pound bluefin tuna catch on rod and reel in 1898, the island soon developed a reputation for catching some of the world's largest fish. Holder promoted conservation and, believe it or not, also introduced rod and reel to sports fishermen, giving some of these big game fish a fighting chance. Holder's 1898 catch led to the founding of the prestigious Tuna Club of Avalon. The Tuna Club is considered the oldest fishing club in the United States. Forming in 1898, the Tuna Clubhouse was eventually built in 1908. This structure would succumb to the Great Avalon Fire of 1915, but would be rebuilt with the very recognizable structure we see today. Here is another world record catch by Edward Llewellyn on August 26, 1903. A black sea bass measuring in at 425 pounds. I remember back in the 80s free-diving at the casino when I ran into a very large black sea bass hanging out in the kelp forest. I'm guessing it was about 200 to 300 pounds, but eye to eye it looked the size of a whale. Here is another shot of Professor Holder, this one taken in 1905. Holder is in the center of this shot, posing with his 227-pound black sea bass. I'm guessing that was also the proper attire for fishermen and women of the era. In this photo titled An Hour's Catch, taken in 1896, you can see the catch included other sea life like moray eels, lobsters, and other assorted fish. If you look in the distance, you can see the recognizable roofline of the Avalon Inn at the corner of Sumner and Crescent. Here is another shot of the Avalon home. By the turn of the century, you can see that the Metropole Hotel added another turret to the west wing. I've discovered that looking at the many additions to the hotel over the years has helped me date many of these historic photographs. Here's another one of those $1,000,000 shots, circa 1902. By this time, the trees had grown quite tall, hiding Tent City. There is the pavilion on the left, and as we pan right, you can still see the distinctive roofline of the Avalon home at the corner of Sumner and Crescent. And at the pier is the new Hermosa II, with a couple glass-bottom boats at their moorings. I'm not sure, but I think I see a couple of power poles. I know that the Bannings provided electricity to Avalon right about that time, using two 40-kilowatt generators that provided electricity for the entire town. As reported in the LA Times on June 20th, 1902, Avalon is to be strictly in the summer so far as transportation is concerned. The island company announces that the new Hermosa will make her initial trip on Saturday next, and on after that day there will be 4 boats to the island every Saturday. Preparations are being made for a grand celebration of the event of the new Hermosa's arrival, and there will be a hot time in the old town Saturday night. And right about this time, many residents began staying past the summer season, which finally led to the construction of Avalon's first real schoolhouse. Built in 1901, it opened with 59 students. I wonder if that's the school marm standing out front. Boats to let. The shoreline of Avalon was crowded with small stands offering a variety of services to the growing number of tourists. This began to create some friction between the small boat operators and the Banning brothers' vision. This would eventually lead to the formation of the Freeholders Improvement Association in 1909 and the construction of the Pleasure Pier, referred to as the Green Pier, which provided a place for independent boatmen and sightseeing excursions. In this shot, you can see they created a tree-lined flood control channel in the foreground. The streets have been configured, and it appears business is booming. You can see by 1897, downtown was steadily growing, and tents were everywhere. By 1897, the Metropole Hotel had added both an east and west wing, adding an additional 40 rooms or more. This was also the year the Bannings capitalized on their business experience operating a stage line by offering stagecoach tours and hunting expeditions on the island. It must have been like a thrill ride, maneuvering hairpin turns and roads that followed the contour of the island, a lot of ups and downs. Here's a shot of the Metropole Bar. I'm pretty sure the Bannings tried to make Avalon a dry town, but anyone who's ever fished realized fishing and alcohol have a long history together. Well, that's been my experience. Although the Bannings first introduced stagecoach tours on Catalina in 1895, it took several years before roads connected areas like Little Harbor, Middle Ranch, Eagle's Nest, and eventually the Isthmus. The most famous of these routes was called the Summit and carried passengers up to the ridge of the Avalon Canyon, known for its steep grades and hairpin turns. You really had to put your trust in your 6-horse team and driver, or whip, as they were commonly referred to. Here is Captain William Banning personally driving this stage. Although these tally-ho-style coaches had a rudimentary suspension system, the ride must have been bone-shaking to say the least. It must have been a real challenge to carve out these roads using mule teams and manual labor. I would imagine they must have used a fair amount of blasting powder as well. I wonder if riders had to sign a waiver. Just kidding. This was the Wild West. Rider beware. Boy, times have changed. The construction of the stage road was under the direction of Samuel Farnsworth. Farnsworth created what was called the Farnsworth Loop, to allow coaches to safely make a U-turn of sorts. I guess you could think of it as a roundabout. One of the favorite early stage stops was the Little Harbor Inn, as recorded in the LA Herald on February 27, 1895. The season begins and the mountain road is traveled. The event of last week was the opening for the season of the stage road from the Isthmus to Little Harbor. The road was in operation for a short time last summer, but those who enjoyed the drive then can form little idea of the grandeur of the trip in the months of winter and spring. Catalina has not in many years been so luxuriantly attired in the mantle of green and the drive up one of the finest mountain roads in the country. Here is an early shot of Middle Ranch, as reported in the LA Times in July of 1898. The stage line, which now runs a distance of 12 miles to Middle Camp and Eagle's Nest. The hotel at Eagle's Nest was opened yesterday and will remain open during the rest of the season. This is the headquarters for goat hunters and is one of the points reached by the stage. Here is the Banning family at Middle Ranch sometime in the mid-1890s. Originally used for sheep shearing and farming by the Banning brothers, Middle Ranch later housed the Wrigley family's Arabian horse breeding program at the El Rancho Escondido. The LA Times also reported in July 30, 1898, the hotel at Eagle's Nest was opened yesterday and will remain open during the rest of the season. This is the headquarters for goat hunters and is one of the points reached by the stage. In this panoramic view taken in 1900, you can see the Banning stage returning from a tour to Avalon. Things were definitely looking good for the burgeoning resort town of Avalon. Plenty of activities for tourists and vacationers. Numerous hotels and tents offered visitors of all segments of society an opportunity to enjoy this little slice of the Mediterranean in our own backyard. What could possibly go wrong? Well, that question will have to be answered in part 3 of this amazing photographic journey back in time. I hope I've sparked your curiosity. There are many more incredible stories yet to tell. I would like to thank the many local historians, historical societies, and Facebook sites that have provided the bulk of photographs and historical information about events, names, places, and dates that I have included with this colorful peek back in time. Keep in mind that this, like my other videos, is simply an attempt to bring to life these historical photographs and weave them together, along with a wee bit of local lore. If you're interested in the unique history of Catalina Island, California, and would like to know more, please consider becoming a member and donating to the Catalina Museum of Art and History. I've attached a link below. And if you're visiting the island, plan a trip to the museum for a tour. You can find the museum at 212 Metropole Avenue. Well, again, thanks for watching. Aloha.